My name is AJ Whalen. I'll be the moderator for today's session. It's Moving to Employee Central Payroll, Transition or Transformation. And on behalf of SpinFX IT, I do want to thank you for joining our session today, whether you're watching us live or you're watching this on demand later on. The topic for today's session came as a result of a lot of conversations that I've had with SAP payroll customers, and a lot of them expressed that they're really unsure of when to migrate, how to migrate to cloud payroll, which configuration and data to migrate, and should they take the opportunity to transform their existing processes during the project. And it's a lot to consider for a lot of customers. And then when you add the question of which tools and accelerators are going to help you de-risk that project, it kind of becomes even more important in a bigger decision. So I thought it was a great topic to cover off. That's why we're here today. So I think you'll really like our panelists for this discussion, because we're going to hear from different perspectives. We're going to hear from a customer's perspective, from an independent payroll consultant's perspective, and from SAP's perspective. So with that said, I'm going to do the introductions for our panelists, and then we'll get going. So our first panelist is Judy Fabrizi. Judy is the payroll manager at Swagelok company, and they're an international leader focusing on the manufacture of gas and fluid system components. With over 20 years of experience in the manufacturing arena, Judy's implemented various SAP product lines in various organizations for system transformations on an international level. In her current role, she's responsible for an optimized cloud-based payroll processing system. I think we know which one that is. And she's also responsible for federal, state, and local compliance, third-party requirements, and related tax returns in the US. And then Judy holds a BS in accounting from The Ohio State University. I get that right?
Nice.
Yes, you did. Don't mess
important.
that up. Very
That's
important in Ohio.
And is a certified public accountant. Our second panelist, at least on my screen, to her left, is Imran Sajid. Imran is a senior director at SAP SuccessFactors with expertise in HR and payroll. He's written a software course that is taught worldwide. He's authored 3 books on technology, and he's spoken at literally every major SAP conference worldwide that you can think of. He's also a volunteer for ASUG. Imran is the founder of the Rethinking HR and Payroll for the Modern Workforce podcast, and that podcast has listeners in over 60 countries. He's got diverse expertise in cloud and on-premise software with experience across marketing, product management, education, professional services, and sales and pre-sales. And if you're on Twitter, it's a great account to follow. It's Imran Sajid ATL on Twitter. Our third panelist, Timm. Mike's an SAP certified consultant. He's led various projects with an emphasis on HR, payroll, time, support, and outsourcing. Mike's been actively involved in the SAP field as a speaker at conferences in the US, Europe, Australia, and Africa since 2003. And I have had the good pleasure of working with Mike on events going back many, many years. He focuses his time working directly with clients and getting to understand their business, and his deep knowledge of SAP is applied by each client to ensure that they have the best experience managing and solving their business challenges. And we have some long bios as a team. And finally, I'm AJ Whalen. I'm Director of Marketing at SpinFX IT. We're an SAP partner that creates software solutions that optimize core HR and payroll processes for both SAP and SAP SuccessFactors customers across the globe. I've worked in SAP HR and payroll as a consultant, a project manager, a system owner, and a marketer for 25 years. So let's jump into the first question. Imran, I'm going to throw this first one to you, but most people agree that the process of migrating from on-premise to Employee Central Payroll can either be a transition or a transformation, like the title of the session says. So Let's start the conversation by talking about both of those, a transition and transformation. What's the difference between them in a payroll migration? And then are there pros and cons? What are the pros and cons of each?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you want to take what you have today and really keep things the same from a business process standpoint, then there is definitely the option to just transition from your on-prem to ECP. And we've seen customers that do that. Some customers might want to do that if they really just don't have the bandwidth for a transformational project at this time. Everyone is kind of at a different place when it comes to that. And for a variety of reasons, you might not want to completely change things. And from a payroll standpoint, it's always a scary thing, right? You've been doing things a certain way for a long time. It works really well. And so this would make sense for organizations that really have payroll down to a science. They do it well, and then they can kind of just take what they have and transition. So you look at the tools available in the marketplace now, such as SpinFX Easy Migration being one of them. We have other partners that do it as well, but it makes it so much easier to take what you have today and move it into an Employee Central Payroll landscape. So I think the biggest thing to consider here is if you have anything in your on-premise landscape which wouldn't be allowed in Employee Central Payroll, and that's really just around SAP code changes. So that's implicit enhancements or objects registered with SAP, and you change the code, and that's problematic for adopting that cloud mindset and being able to update your system accordingly. And so ultimately, from a payroll standpoint, we found that a lot of organizations didn't need to do this type of thing. But with ECP, we offer a tremendous amount of flexibility because you can still have your custom table, your custom programs, your custom functions, operations, and more. And so ultimately, if this is what you're thinking, the business value of this would be mostly around the IT side of things. And what we're seeing is that's not necessarily a bad thing either, right? I'd say for a lot of companies in general, they have an IT mandate to move to the cloud. And so in this case, you would really move your infrastructure to the cloud, as well as you'd be offloading some services that SAP would now handle. So that's upgrades to your system, data backup, disaster recovery. And so there really could be some opportunity to take time to clean up your system. But ultimately, from a business process standpoint, you're doing things the same type of way. So if we look at the flip side of this, an organization who's ready to transform their process and do things differently, the biggest thing being using our payroll control center to move to like more of a continuous payroll where the system does a lot more work. And while it is true on-prem customers can use PCC, there's just various holdups we've seen, right? And including being in the same system with other modules of your finance teams there, not being on the right levels, sometimes even issues with their hardware. I actually, Mike and I were having a conversation pretty recently about a customer having an issue with their NetWeaver gateway, if you recall that, Mike. So there's just various holdups with ECP. Everything's already ready to go. PCC's ready to be implemented, and it's a lot more of a standard way to do that. So a move to ECP is really an opportunity to take some of the things you're doing manually right now and ultimately do them better and how you wish you could be doing them. And that could be overhauling your traditional payroll and automating things that are manual, cleaning up your business processes, as well as using the latest functionality from SAP. So, quite a bit to this, and I guess this was slightly long-winded, but sometimes organizations could also want to do this in multiple steps, and moving to ECP could be more of a transition and then transform in a phase 2. Every organization is slightly different in a slightly different place, so you really have to do what makes sense for your organization and what you have the ability to take on. Right?
So, Mike, I mean, you've worked with a lot of clients in projects like this. What's more common? Is it more common to transition to kind of pick the stuff up and get it over there, or do you see more of the let's take the opportunity to transform, to look at what we've done? Because over time, your configuration, everything else, you accumulate stuff. It's kind of like being a pack rat in a house. You got stuff that just builds. So do you see customers doing both or one approach?
It's actually kind of a combination typically. So we're going to move over, transition as much as possible, but we're going to go through and look at our list of wage types. How many do we actually still need to move over? How much of that of our processes or which processes causes more pain? Let's look at actually updating those, like Imran said, and making them better. So yeah, it's more of the best ones that I've worked with. Most of them are probably more of a transition with a little transformation to make things better for themselves.
Okay, and Judy, kind of transitioning into the next question, from Swagelok's perspective, was your journey to Employee Central Payroll a transition or a transformation? Can you tell us a little bit about your experience?
Sure. So Swagelok is a SAP house. We try to utilize SAP products with every step that we take because we recognize that those systems talk well together. So from our perspective, this was, I hate to say, the guinea pig of projects for us, but it was because we were going to a cloud, and we are an extremely conservative company. So for us to go to a cloud was really a leap for us. And if we're going to make that leap, then we're going to change things. So for us, it was a transformation. I think you mentioned the comment about being a pack rat. I have files and files of W-4s. I don't want to see that stuff. I have people's personal banking in files. I'm like, guys, we're going to destroy all this, because our game plan was to say, our employee is going to be the driver on their data. They're going to own it. So we designed our system so they could go in literally and they pick their banking, they pick their withholdings, and all of those things are at their fingertips. They want to change their address. Hey, you go do that yourself, and then we will be the keeper of your data. So when you do it like that, you put it in the hands of your associates, and I won't tell you that it's always a smooth ride, because some people, you know, could put their banking wrong, or they could put the wrong address in there. But it allows us to ensure that that data that is put in EC then gets replicated over to us in payroll, that we can do our monitoring and our control checks on that data and ensure that it's correct. And I will also tell you, as an SAP, and I if you ever hear me speak, I always am an SAP fan. So the fact that SAP is updating the configuration for us and our taxations and everything is kept up to date, and we can monitor that. We test it before we give the thumbs up on it. I mean, that is a big win for us, because in our regular SAP platform, we're responsible for those updates, and it's trying to find the time for that is kind of too much for our people, you know, with everything we've got going on. So I am really happy with the cloud. We connect over into our general ledger with that, and it's been working great for us.